Welcome back, everybody. President Obama invoking Ronald Reagan to try to get support for the Buffett rule. His plan to raise taxes, of course, on the rich, even wanting to rename it the Reagan rule. Listen.
Some years ago, one of my predecessors traveled across the country pushing for the same concept. This president gave another speech where he said it was crazy, that's a quote, that certain tax loopholes make it possible for multimillionaires to pay nothing while a bus driver was paying 10% of his salary. That wild-eyed socialist tax-hiking class warrior was Ronald Reagan. If it'll help convince folks in Congress to make the right choice, we could call it the Reagan rule instead of the Buffett rule.
But is President Obama taking the former president's words out of context? The Weekly Standard's editor, Bill Kristol, joins us now to share what Reagan really said. You wrote an interesting piece about this and broke this down. Bill, nice to see you this morning. And you make the point that Reagan wasn't going around the country talking about disparities in salary. He was talking about fairness and overall tax reform. And that's not what the president is talking about, doing broad-based tax reform. That's what Reagan was doing, right?
He was doing broad-based across-the-board tax reform. He was doing broad-based across-the-board cutting of tax rates. And why did he? And he justified it. If you look up the two speeches that President Obama cited, he justified it. Why? How? Freedom, less government. So I think President Obama did Republicans a huge favor. He brought Ronald Reagan into the debate. He cited Ronald Reagan. He has a lot of chutzpah, I would say, to cite Ronald Reagan in the context of a tax debate. But fine, I think Governor Romney should engage this debate and put forth a Reaganite vision of across-the-board tax reform, lower tax rates, and above all, the philosophy of Reagan, freedom, less government, against President Obama's philosophy, which he's been very upfront about, which is more government. What's Obamacare? What's the stimulus? What's all the regulatory stuff? But again, the fundamental fact is that President Obama wants to raise taxes on at least some American families. He's explicit about that. And President Reagan wanted to cut tax rates.
All right, let's listen to some of what Reagan said back in 1985.
We're going to close the unproductive tax loopholes that have allowed some of the truly wealthy to avoid paying their fair share. In theory, some of those loopholes were understandable, but in practice, they sometimes made it possible for millionaires to pay nothing, while a bus driver was paying 10% of his salary, and that's crazy. Do you think the millionaire ought to pay more in taxes than the bus driver, or less?
Well, look, that's the notion that the president wants to highlight, that Reagan was talking about fair share.
Right.
But I want to get back to what you said about this becoming an opportunity, perhaps, for Mitt Romney. How does he take this and use it to his advantage?
Incidentally, I don't think Republicans and Mitt Romney should run away from the notion of fairness. I mean, it is a fundamental question. Which is more fair? To have the government deciding where to allocate money, or to provide more, to let people have more freedom and more opportunity? The way the Republicans take advantage of this, I think, is we were talking about this in the last segment. I think if Romney is to win, he has to elevate this campaign. He has to make it about big issues, big choices, big policy choices going forward. Obamacare, tax policy, reforming entitlements or not. The Obama campaign is pretty good. We saw President Obama here. They're good. If we end up in a tactical back and forth, where are Romney's tax returns? What about this particular thing that some Romney surrogate said? The Romney campaign will win some of those exchanges, as they have the last couple of days on Hillary Rosen. But I wouldn't really bet. I think then an incumbent president with the weight of the White House behind him wins a small stuff campaign. That's like having a football game where you just have, the bigger team wins if it's just a 3 yards and cloud of dust running game. If you get into a more wide open game, bigger ideas, I think the Romney campaign has a good chance.
All right, Bill Kristol, I would encourage everyone to go out and read that piece, because you can see all the selective editing out there on the campaign trail with President Reagan's speeches, and you do a great job of breaking that down this week in the Weekly Standard. Bill, great to see you this morning.
Thanks. Good to be with you.
Make Mitt read.